Startups don't fail because they run out of money. They fail because they don't understand value. So we started one of Africa's first solar companies. We sold thousands of these solar lamps. We reached tens of thousands of people, and we raised hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we still failed. Whatever you make, produce, or sell, whether it's apps, apples, or Apple computers, if your customer's not willing to pay more than the price, they won't buy it. I want to share with you what I learned selling solar lamps across East Africa when I was in my 20s, and why even though we had funding and world-class engineers, we still missed the mark and failed. Today, I'm going to be brutally honest with you. I'm going to be open and vulnerable in a way that I've never been before. And please note that it's been 10 years and I've gained a bit of weight. I've lost my hair. This is still very new, fresh, and difficult for me to talk about. I want to share with you the 3 most important lessons I learned over the last 15 years building and running businesses in Africa and around the world. Solve the right problem. Build for value. And design for affordability and trust. After university, while my friends went into investment banking, management consulting, and accounting, I decided to move to the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro to work with a Canadian charity, our version of the Peace Corps. And I loved it. I learned Swahili and I saw the need for solar. At that time, people were using kerosene lanterns to light their homes. The toxic fumes led to millions of premature deaths every year. Kids couldn't study, and it was actually very expensive in the long run. So, back in Canada, I had this idea for how to make solar affordable. So we applied to the Harvard Social Enterprise Conference. And I remember I was skating on an ice rink in downtown Toronto when news came that we had been accepted for this conference at Harvard. And so my buddies and I started preparing, and we booked our flights. The morning of our flight, there was a little bit of snow. As we were boarding, a little bit more. And as we took our seats, the captain announced our flight had been canceled. We were in a once-in-a-generation blizzard. Oh, Canada. So I looked up buses, trains, anything to get me to Boston in time to pitch. And I found a car rental agency that would let me take a car and drive it all the way to Boston. And when I told my friends this, they looked at me like I was crazy. So they politely declined, and I took my prototype and I drove the 10 hours to Boston in the snow so that I could pitch at Harvard the next day. And while stopped at the US border, I'm Canadian obviously, they went through everything. And they found my prototype solar lamp. And I had to do the entire business model pitch and explain exactly how it all worked. And that turned out to be my first US investment pitch. And it turns out it was good practice for Harvard because we placed in the top 5 the next day. And when I got back to Canada, I quit my high-paying banking job, I took my life savings, and I moved back to Tanzania to see if we could make this work. I started pitching around the world. One of the first places was none other than the Principality of Monaco. And after His Royal Highness, the Prince, made his remarks, we pitched in front of a room of some of the wealthiest people in the world. And guess what? We actually won. So there we were. One of the billionaires came up to us and said, "Are you free tomorrow?" And I should have checked my schedule to make sure I wasn't actually busy, but I just blurted out, "Yes, of course." And so he gave us his card, and I remember it was the first time I had seen a card with someone's name officially with Sir in front of the name. So we arranged to meet at his villa the next day. So That's how we made our first big mistake. There we were, sipping cucumber water and designing a product with billionaires in mind, while we should have been focusing on the billion people that didn't have solar. I kept getting affirmed by the wrong people, the billionaires, the borders and customs agents. And I remember meeting one of our first customers, Alice. When I showed her the lamp, she looked at it, looked at me and said, "Je, hii itachaji simu yangu? Will this charge my phone?" Now let me tell you the second most important lesson I learned along the way. Build for value. So after we received our first investment, I brought onto my team one of the best engineers I know. He also happens to be my younger brother, Brian. And we set about to design the coolest solar lantern of all time. I remember the dozens of meetings we had on the angle of the solar panel to make it look just like an iPhone. We wasted precious time on cool design features that were important to us, but made little difference to the end customer. You know how they say you get what you put in? Well, you actually get more than what you put in. Otherwise, why do you do it? Why are any of you here today? Or why are any of you watching this online? It's because the value that you get from this exceeds the cost of your time or money. You know, I went to one of Canada's best business schools. We don't have that many, so it's not as impressive. And what I'm about to explain to you is the single most important thing that I learned across those 4 years and in my career since. And it all boils down to value. There are 3 critical aspects to value. The floor, which is the cost of what it takes to make your product or service, and the value to your customer, which is the ceiling, and the price, which splits the difference in between those. And unless your customer perceives the value to be higher than the price, they won't buy it. So I came back to Tanzania after months of endless discussions with our engineers and plastics and assembly teams in China. We were ready, or at least I thought we were. We hit the ground running. We went up and down Mount Kilimanjaro, talking to customers and selling our products. That customer I mentioned, Alice, after every question and request for a feature that she would make, we'd need to ask ourselves 2 questions. What did it cost to build in, and what was she willing to pay? Take, for example, her question whether we could make the lamp twice as bright. Let's say, for example, a lamp with twice the lumens costs $1 more. Then if we ask Alice, how much are you willing to pay for a lamp twice as bright? And she says, 50 cents. Well, there you have it. We've increased our floor by $1, and we've increased our ceiling by 50 cents. So we've actually destroyed 50 cents of value by making the lamp twice as bright. It is this iterative, customer-centric approach that really works. This is also very empowering. If we don't get this right, if the thousands of Alices out there don't like our product and don't see the value in it, we're out of business. She literally has the future of our company in her hands. So we had over-engineered our product to be something really cool that we liked, but didn't matter to Alice. So we went back to the drawing board. Brian and I redesigned the lamp to be strong, sturdy, and you could actually drop it. And you know, I know this because we tested it for drop testing. We did water ingress, we did everything. And this sturdy, circular disc, we called it the hockey puck because it looks like a hockey puck and because, of course, we're Canadian. And this time around, every decision came down to those two questions. What did it cost to build in? And what would Alice be willing to pay? So when we headed back to Tanzania to try selling these lanterns, that's when I learned another important lesson about value. It is also defined by trust and affordability. Let me explain. We understood that our solar lamp would be replacing the kerosene that Alice was used to buying on a daily basis. But she wasn't suddenly going to change how she spent her money. So we had to make the solar lantern equivalent to the cost of kerosene. We had to make apples to apples, kerosene to solar. And if we could price our hockey puck lamps in a way that was affordable, then we could unlock the thousands of Alices across Tanzania. So we built our model around a pay-per-recharge mechanism that leveraged the network of small shops around Tanzania. And here's how we packaged it. Each business-in-a-box kit came with 2 hockey puck solar lamps, a solar panel, phone charging cables, and a stand, and some stickers and stuff because it's fun. And we sold them to the small shops, who then became our solar entrepreneurs. They then rented the lamps out to the customers we once directly sold to. We were able to unlock the affordability for the end customer, replicating the cash flow pattern they were used to. One of our first end users, the shop's customer, put it this way: I used to spend $3 a week on kerosene. Now with your lamp, I spend $2. My kids can study, and I can work longer hours into the night with no toxic smoke. I remember this so clearly because it was one of the first times I truly cried as a grown-up. All those long bus rides, those long flights, those motorcycle taxis when I was sitting at the back going in the middle of the rural communities, the hundreds of investor calls and rejections were all of a sudden worth it. In the end, we figured out how to design for value. But Alice soon had the option to buy radios, TVs, fridges, and many other options that she could buy with her mobile phone. And since our solar endeavor, I've been helping companies on the continent discover their value, especially from a financial perspective. I was most recently the CFO for a technology-enabled distribution company that reaches millions of customers across Africa. And the question I asked every single time we were looking at entering a new market or launching a new product was, what's the value? But here's what I want you to take away. If you're building something, don't start with what's possible. Start with what's valuable. And whether you're in Montreal, Mumbai, or Moranga, if somebody is not willing to pay more than the price, they won't buy it. That's how we build the future. Not just with capital, but with value. Thank you.